Hello, Megan.
Hello, Michelle.
Welcome to the Spicy Brain Podcast, where we navigate neurodiversity with curiosity, joy, and radical acceptance.
That's right.
You have like a little kick sound, right, that you do at the end of that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Ching.
Ching. Oh, my goodness. Well, we always like to kind of bring up a story of some sort, and we've been really focusing in on your ADHD part of your neurodiverse brain, this series with the Driven to Distraction book. And we're going to focus in on a story that I think will illuminate one of the symptoms of ADHD today. Then we'll, and maybe for both of us, actually.
I think so.
And then, yeah, like a little bit spicy on both sides today. And then we will kind of, again, dig into that brain of yours, maybe mine as well. And then talk a little bit about strategies and things that we hope we can actually help ourselves with, and then check in with our community. So today I want to talk about one of the things I was reading in this book. It talks all about mood swings. Okay, so the idea being that people with ADHD have, I don't know if it's a more or dramatic or can have more mood swings. Would you identify with that, Meg?
Yes, 100%. I can go from like the happiest I've ever been to like, whoa, what just happened?
And what's so funny, right, is that I'm definitely not a flatliner. I definitely have moods, but we had a little interaction today. We're getting ready to do this podcast, and I don't know, what was it? You hadn't slept well, right?
Yeah, I just didn't sleep.
And you're like,
last
I need
night.
a little nap. And I was like, okay. And it was like 11 or something. And then what was it? 2:00 comes by and I still haven't heard from you. So I message you and I'm saying, hey, when are we doing this? Because I have to go do something. And you tell me what?
Nothing. Because I was still asleep.
Yeah. Yeah. So then I call and it's about 3:00 and I say, hey, by the way, I've got dinner plans. We need to get on the podcast. So by this point, now 4 hours have gone by since we were supposed to have recorded, right? And we get on, and the number one thing that happens, which is always my nightmare, is that we have a technical difficulty. And I have zero tolerance for technical difficulties. I mean, pretty much. It's 0 to pissed in like a minute. I'm like flipping off the microphone. I was out of control. You can't hear me the whole time. I was just, because we see each other, right? When we're podcasting usually. Did it just look like I was going nuts? I mean, because you couldn't hear me. It was a silent movie.
Oh yeah, no, but I knew exactly what was happening. This is the thing. As an ADHD person, I can feel people's emotions. And so your emotions were coming loud and clear through. There was no microphone, but I could hear them. And I just felt terrible. It's like,
yeah. And then we got the sound going, right? And you said, well, what's going on, basically? And I just lose it because I had all these plans and things I was supposed to do and feeling, really bunched up. And it's right before my work week starts again and all of this. And then you felt terrible.
I felt awful.
So you went from waking up from like the happiest nap ever.
Yep.
Having your little peanut butter and jelly.
That's right. Just working on my
going
puzzle,
along.
like doodling along.
To what?
Feeling like absolute, like just feeling so awful and so sorry, and like I messed up once again. I like took a too long of a nap, and I was just beating myself up the entire time. Like, I created this moment for Michelle. I created this terrible moment for you.
Yeah, and then you asked me.
Well, then we were doing a sound check.
We're doing a sound check though, and you asked me, so what did you have for lunch?
I'm like, yeah, just tell me what you have for lunch. And what did you say, Michelle?
I didn't have lunch, Megan. I was waiting for you so that we would do the podcast, and then you weren't there, and then and
And then I went deeper into the hole. I was like, "Oh my god. Like, can I just shrink away into nothing right now?" Felt terrible.
and thank goodness I've had a lot of therapy, because finally I just go, this is nothing to do with you. I am having a complete reaction because I have not had protein in 5 hours. Let me go eat. I'll be back in 20 minutes and I will be in a different mood. And I thought there is no way to illustrate on both sides this any better
Yeah.
than that moment. And you said something when we came back on before we started the recording, which I thought was really nice of you, because I was obviously in the wrong in all ways for that one. And you said that, wow, look at how much better we're doing. Can you explain that?
Well, for anybody who has a sister
Yeah.
or a
Yeah.
sibling or a best friend or somebody
Mm-hmm.
that you love tremendously, there's going to be times when you piss each other off.
Sure.
And I think in the past, this would have derailed us completely.
Mm-hmm.
You would have gone off and not really said anything. And then I would have stressed about it. And like, you know, I would have seen your react. Like I would have seen all of that frustration you were having and
Mm-hmm.
then not knowing how to talk about it or ask about it. And then I would have stewed in it for a very, very long time. And then until we actually came back together, maybe like a day or two later, you know, like it just would have, that's what would have happened before. It's what has happened in the past. And,
Absolutely.
and so for us to like come back to it, like not even 20 minutes later, I was like, wow, that's a huge change for us.
And on both sides, which is really cool. I think, it's funny when you're saying that. And I just think it's funny because, part of what I love about what we do in our podcast is just be vulnerable. I think on both sides,
Yeah.
quite a lot. A friend of mine was saying, I just love how connected you two are, and how easy it seems like it flows between you. And I remember looking at them and I was like, that is hard earned. Okay. Hard earned on both sides. Like, we both have done our own internal work and then so much work together to get to the
Yeah.
point of saying, yeah, I'm just having a minute, and I lost it, and it's time for me to go take a break and come back and obviously treat you, and make sure that I'm putting myself in check, because that was needed. But
Mhm.
also, yes, 100%. And also, though, you don't need to take that on and internalize it and have that, that I don't know. We got into this, and this is the part I want to dig in a little bit.
Yeah.
As we were talking about this, and it's not fully formed what I'm about to say, so it's a little bit clunky, because I usually try to come up with a lot of questions. I'm one of those planner type people.
Yeah. That's why you're awesome.
This one I don't really have planned, but I would love for us to both dig in, and feel free to ask me questions too. What happened in that interaction for both of us? So
Mm.
I was frustrated with something. Part of it was the technology that had nothing to do with you. And this I will tell you, I will out myself. I'm ready now.
Mm.
The mic was not on.
Yeah, I had a feeling. I had a feeling. Because, like, remember when I asked you and
Remember
you're
the
like,
green light? The green light was on, and I'm like, "It's on, Megan. It's on. It's on."
yeah.
No, it just
That was gonna be
wasn't.
the next thing I asked you because I went back and I looked while you were off. I guess it's okay. So what I told Michelle to do was I told her to restart Chrome
Yeah, right.
and restart whatever. So while
I
she
did.
was doing that, I
Mhm.
did my own test to see can the green light still be on with my microphone in the off position.
Yes, it
And
can.
sure enough, it can.
I was so not ready. I was not ready to tell you that's what happened. I was so embarrassed.
That's right, because you just so told me. You didn't say that earlier.
No, I was saving it for the podcast so you could laugh so hard.
I love you.
So I try to turn off I never turn off the mic usually. and I don't remember why we had to turn it off, but I did, and I just forgot to turn it back on. So anyway, I had a whole meltdown about that.
Yeah.
So in terms of, for me, what was happening is I really didn't have enough fuel in my
Mm.
brain, and I'm at a point in my semester 2 teaching where it's sort of the midterms, and I'm kind of at a level of stress that's higher than normal throughout the year
Every
as
fall.
well. Yeah, every fall is that way for me for sure. So, but what was happening in your brain? So when I ate, I calmed down, I took some breathing, I did some of my little meditative things that I know to do, and then figured out the mic really was off. Um
I love you.
Love you too. But what was happening in your brain?
Well, okay, first off,
Mhm.
the way that it was presented as you leaving to go get yourself some food, is what you said after, like, it's like after the fact. I think what you actually told me
Mhm.
was like, "I'm gonna do some self-care and get myself some protein and fiber." And then you walked off. And I was like, "Got it." So so I just was feeling so bad. I was like, "Oh, Megan, you're such an idiot. Like, you did it again.
Mm,
You didn't communicate well. You didn't tell her what was going on, or didn't think to tell her, and you just like you indulged in like fixing yourself and not thinking about the other person. And so I just was feeling terrible.
mm.
So so right behind me in my little office here, I've got a puzzle. So I started working on the puzzle a little bit. I was like, okay, I'll work on that. And oh, do you know though, Michelle, I had a slight moment where I was like, well, wait, I'm ready. Why is she not ready?
Oh,
I
I like
know.
that. That's nice.
I did. I was like, I'm ready. And then I was like, wait, Megan, shut up. Like you have no right at all to be this like sassy. I was like, no, no, no. So it took me a second to to switch over to like, okay, I'm gonna work on my puzzle.
Mm,
And then I started working on it. And it's this like physical feeling. It's like, it's like I feel like I felt my shoulders were like rolled forward and like my back was
mm,
kind of hunched and I just was protecting my chest. And
mm,
I just felt all this like, I don't know, compression
mm,
in my chest area. And part of it, like I just kind of was replaying the interaction. I was replaying certain parts. And this is what happens to me a lot of times is like my brain gets fixated on certain sentences or images or whatever, the
mm,
like wedding gukeki
mhm,
or I have amnesia, I something from like a movie, like I'll just get fixated on something I've seen. And so I was replaying certain interactions that we had, and at one point I just like took a moment and I said, okay, wait a second, is this my issue? Like what's mine and what isn't mine?
yes, yes.
And I stopped for a second and I was like, well, wait a second. It's not my responsibility what you do with your time and how you
Mhm,
structure your time, even if like, you know, it's like yeah, yesterday, right? Like
mhm.
we were gonna record yesterday, and then there was like a weird technical thing again with like your phone where you weren't receiving messages from me. And so I messaged you at the time. I was like ready at like
Yeah,
I was ready early and
yeah.
I was so proud of myself and I got on and I was here and then like you never showed up and I was like this is weird. Michelle's not showing up. So I text you a couple more times and I was like okay, well maybe something's going on. Never thought to actually physically call you. Like maybe she's tired. Maybe she just like, has had a like cuz I know this is fall and I was like maybe
Yeah.
just you needed to like have a moment cuz that's something that I would do. So I like, pivoted and just like, well, I'll just do some stuff until until we figure out what we're gonna do. And then we finally figured out like at 4 o'clock in the afternoon that you weren't receiving any of our text
Well,
messages.
I kept going, "Where is she? Like, what's happening?" Right? And
Yeah.
so, I did take a nap, and I probably took an equivalent nap yesterday. while I was waiting for your text that never came.
So you
And
can
I
take a
can
4-hour
take a
nap.
4-hour nap. It is possible. It's so possible. Yeah, it's funny because I mean, funny and not funny. I mean, the piece that was interesting to me today was that I am curious when you're in that state, you feel it so much more. And that's one of the things we've talked about, that you feel emotions so much more. So you're feeling other people's emotions. And then that idea of having to separate out, wait, what's the part that is mine versus what isn't?
Yeah.
And that when the mood shifts, is when you can't, those are stay muddled, or is the mood shift, like when does your mood shift? Do you know that?
When does my mood shift?
You said like your mood can change on a dime, right? It can shift on a dime.
Mhm.
Like it can go from happy to the greatest highs to the greatest lows.
Yeah.
I've experienced it with you and other people in my life who are ADHD. Mine today was very specifically around lack of
Food.
food.
Protein.
Yeah, a protein, yeah, which I think is an issue also for people with ADHD, is that needing protein for your brain is really important. But
Yeah, because like, when you said that, that kinda made me think, like, that happens to me too. Because like, if I get hangry, that's the
mhm,
same thing. But also, I think because my brain uses protein so much faster than probably the
mm,
normal person,
mhm,
I might have just let's say I just ate, but then I do, like, an intense couple of tomatoes in a row,
mhm,
then my brain is going to struggle. It needs protein, like, an hour after I've eaten. But
mm,
that's not the normal thing to do, right? That's not what nutritionists say, like, "Oh, you're supposed to wait and have a snack, like, a few hours later," but it's not so I think that I kind of wonder if part of the mood swings are that when I've done some very mentally tasking ta men mentally
challenging.
challenging
Mhm.
tasks, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I kind of wanna keep an eye on that, but I think also, the other side of it, there's 2 of them for me, at least that I can recognize right now. The second one is that when I'm feeling someone else's emotions, it's one thing to, like, see that someone's having an emotion and it has nothing to do with me,
Mm,
but that took a long time to figure out. So, when I was younger, like, every single emotion anybody had, I not only felt it, I felt responsible for it.
mm,
Or I didn't know how to handle it, so I felt like I felt responsible for fixing it
mm,
and for, making it all okay. I had to learn over time that that was not my responsibility. But, when I was working at Apple, when I first started in my 20s, and people would come in really upset, and I remember I was not the person who could handle that. I would hand off any hard, challenging person to my manager because I was like, "I don't get paid enough for that."
mhm.
And then as time went on and I started doing therapy and I started, getting more confident and comfortable in myself, I became that person who was like, "Oh, you have an issue? Okay, great. I don't have to hold on to your emotion, but I can help you out. Like I can
Mm,
be here with you. It's not my responsibility to make you feel better, but I can definitely do everything I can to try and help."
yeah.
So like that kind of emotion is one type of emotion where there's an external source, someone comes to me and they're upset or they're in an emotional state and I recognize I have nothing to do with it.
This
That
is
is
their whole thing, not yours.
Yeah, exactly. But then there's the other side of it where, like, today,
Yeah.
I was clearly an element in the frustration, if not
Sure.
the largest element probably of the frustration.
Well, actually, the largest element was something that was my fault that I found out later, which was the mic was off because I was fine before I started it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think the piece of it for me, and this is the part where I feel like I've grown a lot, is at first I was so frustrated, and I have trouble when I'm feeling that level of frustration, or I don't know. It's not really like anger, but it's just this feeling of out of control, right? Something's out of my control.
Mm.
and wanting to pin that feeling somewhere else outside of me.
Yeah.
Whereas like for you, I feel like you automatically bring it in. I automatically want to push it off
Mm.
or put it away or something, right? And so for me at first it was like, well, if we had started earlier, then this wouldn't have been an issue and now I wouldn't be late to this other thing and blah blah blah. So it's really like not fair to you. And I think you were right in saying in your internal monologue that you described, which was, wait a minute, she has control of her time as much as I have control. That's totally true. And I feel
Yeah.
like that's one of the pieces that's been so interesting in our in listening to you about this is how far you've come in separating that out, and how really like that idea, sort of in the tagline that we came up with, which is navigating neurodiversity with curiosity, joy, and radical acceptance. And this idea of radical acceptance goes both ways,
Yeah.
right? I have to radically accept that there's certain things about this disorder, this invisible difference that you have that is never going to change,
Yeah.
right? And I can never, if I continue to think or expect that things are going to happen on a specific timeline, it's only going to be damaging to both of us in our relationship, because it's essentially like saying, hey, you have a broken leg and I'm going to, or a disabled leg of some sort, and you're going to have to run a marathon, you know,
Yeah.
and that's never going to happen. So then how do we create boundaries and things around it? The other piece is that my own self-care and my own taking care of myself, and anyone who loves somebody with ADHD, right, is that you're going to have to figure out for yourself, how do you take care of yourself in these situations and put boundaries around it for yourself as well, because it can be, if you're not at your A game,
Yeah.
right, if you're not in your best state of mind, then now handling this at the same time, you may not do as good a job of it, which I didn't today, right? I didn't handle it as well as I normally would. So
Yeah.
it's interesting, right? It's like this radical acceptance piece of it. When I say that, what does it make you think of?
There was a moment when I was working on my puzzle where I just had to say stop
Mm,
to the little hamster wheel in my head that was repeating the same thing over and over and over again.
that gremlin, like you have talked about before.
Yeah, the
Mm-hmm.
gremlin. The radical acceptance of I had to like interject this new saying of like her time is hers, and
Mm,
I can only acknowledge what I have done and what I have brought to this. But like
yeah.
if she didn't eat lunch, that's not on me.
No. And I think I said that to you before we got off, whether you remembered it or not. I did say, this
Yeah.
is on me, Megan. Like, this is me. Like, I need to go take care of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Funny enough, I did not hear that.
No. Yeah.
And so I think that's the part where it's like being able to recognize what's mine and what's yours, and that it doesn't do me any good to beat myself up for the parts that I have no control over.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's historically happened for me is that others have beaten me up for m- my part in things, right? So like my part in the challenges. So it was just easier for me to beat myself up about everything
Mm-hmm.
rather than be potentially, what's the word? Like potentially, what ended up happening is that like I got blamed for a lot of problems
Oh, yeah, for
in
sure.
life.
Yeah.
And in that process of being blamed, it was some of it was me, but some of it also wasn't. It was like just
Right.
it's easier to take it out on somebody else sometimes.
Sure.
And so then I just decided like I don't know if I meant like you know did this on purpose, but I decided that like I would just take it all and I would just own it all ahead of time. That way, if there was a problem, I've already beaten myself up for it and no one can beat me up any further than I have. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's been the big thing recently is, in a weird way, like us doing this process, I'm actually physically seeing myself in real time have these issues.
Mm.
And it's a great it's like a great mirror because I'm recognizing like what's happening. We're talking about it, we're discussing it, and I'm also saying to myself like, "Whoa, that was not on me." So I can
Mhm.
kind of go back and review the footage. We're
Yeah.
sort of like an NFL team right now.
Oh, what?
And like I got the instant replay and I'm like, "Wait a second.
That was not me.
That was
Yeah.
not me,"
Yeah.
or whatever it is. And so it's been helpful in that way to say like what is mine and what is not mine.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting too in this particular interaction, I was saying it's hard to love somebody with ADHD because if you are upset about something that has happened, right? Whether it's correct to be upset about with that person, there's not a lot of room for my emotions. Sometimes it feels like because your emotions are so big and it just
Yeah.
that little gremlin takes over, and then I'm like, wait, you just went down a rabbit hole that I did not intend for you to go down. I'm saying something, I'm being human, I'm not saying it the right way. Can we just like pause that, stop that? And sometimes you can and sometimes you can't, and that I think that's hard, is that it feels like sometimes that it's that piece is a little bit tough on the other side of it from my
Yeah.
perspective. Yeah.
Well, and it's a question of like it's hard for me sometimes if it's a big gremlin to deal with
Mhm.
it in person because I think you just have to like take a step back and just
Yeah.
both okay, just take 15, let's
Which
come
is
back.
what we did. I said, let's take 20 minutes and then I'll be
Yeah.
back. And I think it was 15 or something. It wasn't actually 20, but
Yeah.
yeah.
And and to just sort of like take a moment to do an internal check-in,
Yeah.
and it gets a little bit easier that way because like it's hard. I think it's hard to separate with what is mine versus what is yours when we're like face to face
Mm.
because we have so much history together and I am looking at you and I'm seeing all of your emotion and I'm taking it on. And so it's like, okay, well, once I physically remove myself, like when I can't see you anymore, then it allows me to have a moment and process what's really going on.
Mhm.
It allows me that opportunity. So like whether or not I want to process it, that's a totally
Yeah.
different
Whether
story.
you
And that,
take
then
the
that's on me.
opportunity or not, right?
Yeah.
That's the
And then
thing.
that's on me. Like if I don't take the
Yeah.
opportunity to like process it, then that's on me.
Sure.
Um yeah.
And I kind of was wondering because your mood in this case at the beginning, before we took the 15 minutes, was obviously shifted very quickly.
Mhm.
And then you did this sort of, it sounds like reflection and replay, instant replay of things. And then kind of where you were able to kind of stop the gremlins. Did that then impact your mood? Did your mood shift with that process, or or do you still feel the effects of the mood you were in before? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I it did affect my mood once I kind of
Mm,
processed it a bit, and I think in the past, I would if I hadn't processed it, yeah, I would still be in it, and I would struggle to get out of it, and we would not have be talking right now.
right,
We wouldn't have been able to get to this point,
right.
but because I was able to take some time for myself and to, process it, I was able to, like, put aside the gremlin that wasn't mine,
Mhm.
It's like I could just sort of kick that gremlin to the curb.
Yeah, yeah.
And then also, when we just had a moment, you and I, like, where we recognized it together and we verbalized it, and so I think both of us felt seen, that, like, about, like, what we were talking about, and so then I could just feel like because I could feel my body shift. Because even when we
Mm,
were when like, I had maybe moved that gremlin to the side, but I didn't think we were gonna record today.
mm,
'Cause I was like, "Okay," and I think I told you ahead of time, I was like, "Well, it's okay, like, I can do something different, and I don't wanna bother you, and I don't wanna do" like, "I just wanna, like
yeah,
you seem really stressed, and this sounds like it's gonna be super stressful, so, like, I'll just figure it out for myself. I don't have to worry about it." Like, I wanted to try to make it better.
right.
And then, you stopped and, like, talked to me about it, and we discussed it for a bit, and, we're able, I think, to come to a good space, which is when I said, "Wow, this is like we've worked through this very quickly." 'Cause
Yeah.
I'm pretty certain that during all of this, Michelle, we have had a fight or, like, a frustration with each other where we did
Mhm.
not record, and then we didn't record for a few more days. Like, I feel like we've had at least one
Yeah, I'm sure. I can't
at the
it's
very
funny.
beginning.
Yeah, at the very beginning, maybe. I think I would say that that had happened to us so many times earlier in our life. I feel like and it might have happened in one of these as well. I know there's been times definitely that we're probing something for you that's truly exhausting.
Mhm.
You need to go and relax and just check out after we talk about it. So I know that for sure is true, and we don't record as much because of that sometimes. But I think one of the pieces you're probably right. I don't remember that in real time right now, but I definitely know we've had interactions before in our lives that have really led to us not talking to each other for periods of time.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that we're working through that. I think part of that is just our communication and learning how to talk differently. And part of that comes from understanding more about what your brain goes through, but it's equally me understanding my brain and what my brain goes through. And
Yeah.
this isn't, even though we talk about, digging into your brain a lot, I think that I have equally dug into my own to understand that, I have these perfectionist tendencies and I have these anxieties. And we were watching Inside Out too, and the math department's going to do a whole Halloween about Inside Out. And I love that movie, both movies, for talking about emotions and how complicated and complex they are. The anxiety one, I think, for if anyone hasn't seen Inside Out too, I don't know, but the one, I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, but when she's there and she's, like, having her panic attack, I've had those before, and I know what that feels like. And so, my brain deals with the storms differently than your brain does maybe, but I think, it's important to know your own brain, and also what you need to take care of yourself. And even the concept of self-care, like, I don't think I would have used those words even a year ago,
Yeah.
because I roll my eyes every time someone's like self-care, and I'm like, "Bleh," whatever, and it's still hard. I mean, when somebody asks me, like, how are you going to take time for yourself? What are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't know. That's not on my brain at all. I'm taking care of everybody else. That's what I do. So, but that's not fair, right? Because if I
Yeah.
get to that point where I'm not taking care of myself, I'm not eating my lunch, I'm not doing what I need to do, then I do blow up on people, and then I do take it out on people like you that I love, and that's not fair either. So, it's both sides. But what's interesting to me with the ADHD piece of it specifically is how quickly it turns, even if you're doing all your self-care.
Yeah.
And that's the part to me that makes it seems so much more intense in some ways, is that I wonder if it's coming, or is it, you know what I mean? Like, or is it
No.
just something pops or something interaction happens or whatever it is, and then now the mood is shifted.
Honestly, it's like I think it just depends on how I sleep sometimes.
Mm.
Because I mean, you remember last week? Last week was rough for me.
Mhm.
I mean, I was struggling and dealing with the whole, work situation and trying to figure out like what was right and what was, good for me. And like I could go and work at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, and then the next day I wake up and I feel like a complete and total failure,
Right.
and so it's really hard. And I think that that's the challenge, is that like the brain just works in a way that we don't understand
Mhm.
yet.
Mhm.
My theory, and this is just a theory, but my
Sure. We are
theory
not
right now,
doctors. We do not diagnose. We just talk a lot about things and
we
try to
just
understand it
gab.
better for ourselves.
But like my theory is really about it, like it's the gym theory,
Hmm.
that I'm going to the gym with like certain tasks, right?
Mm.
So let's like, and it's hard to know because, it's easier when you're at the gym and you're like, well, I've never done this arm curl thing before. And so Can
I
you tell I
totally
don't go to
I
the gym?
love hearing you try to talk about lifting weights. Go on.
This arm
This
curl.
arm curl thingy. Okay, I
Yay,
love it.
forward. Uh, but But, like, so okay, okay, I do know about some machines, right? Well, I
Okay.
can tell okay, so, like, if there's a machine that you've never worked on before, you're like, "Oh my god, I've
Mhm.
never used this machine before that targets a specific muscle,
Yeah.
so I might be sore tomorrow, or I'm gonna be
Mm.
sore for a while until my body gets used to it." And I feel like that's what happens with my brain is that, like,
Mm.
there are these different the brain is a giant muscle, and so, like, there's these different tasks that occur throughout the day that some of them I know really well, and then
Mm.
others that just pop up that you've never dealt with before, and I
Yeah.
don't know those ones really well. And
Uh,
and the thing is, like, they tax me in a way that I don't know, which is why when I go to bed and your body tries to repair itself while you're in sleep, you don't know what body you're gonna wake up with because you're not really 100% sure how your brain was taxed the day before.
mm. That is fascinating.
This is my theory.
Can I repeat back what I think I'm hearing?
Yes, please do. Make it make sense, Michelle.
Well, no, I think it made complete sense. I just want to kind of process it with you and dig into it because that right, if you don't know, you went and there were like all these different nautical machines or whatever and you don't know did you do a bicep curl or did you do a hamstring, whatever, right?
She
Did
had
you
to throw in the bicep curl just to remind me that I did not know what I was talking about. You know, the arm curl. Oh, the bicep curl, Megan? Yeah, that one. The big
Well,
sister always is around, you
oh
know?
man, rears her ugly head for
I
sure.
love it, I love it.
For sure. Well, what's funny about it is that I did not do that to, show off. I'm just that much of a nerd that I can't think of any other word to describe it except the word I know. So anyway,
Yeah, I love
but
you.
okay, yeah, sorry. Anyway, but you're saying like I don't know which part of my brain got taxed, and so it's having to repair or do whatever, and maybe it's a part that hasn't been used, or it's extra hard to, I did 100 pounds instead of 50 pounds. And so I have no idea what that's going to be like to repair it. That makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah. And like, did you have enough protein and did you have enough all the things that you would need to be successful the next day? That's interesting.
Well, and then to put another layer on that, okay, so if you are someone who has physical chronic pain,
Mhm.
and you go and you start working out with somebody and they say, "Okay, you have chronic pain, so you know pain really well
Mhm.
in certain areas of your body."
Yeah.
Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to blindfold you and I'm going to set these machines to whatever I want to set them to. You don't get to know the weight. You don't get to
Mm.
know, ahead of time what we're going to do. You
Right.
just have to do whatever I tell you to do. And
Mm.
so then, like, you're basically walking around, you've already experienced pain, but now you have this additional pain on top of you, and you're not exactly sure why. Was it because of the amount of weight? Was it because of my stance and my form?
Yeah.
You don't know why you've messed up.
And that's so maddening because our brains as humans want to figure out patterns.
Yeah.
And so if you can't figure out the pattern of it, then you're not sure what's coming. That's got to be hard. So in your mind, and I know you deal with chronic pain as well, which can be connected to mood, right? And can be
Mhm.
connected to a lot of things going on in our brains. But I that idea that just to simplify it, every single day you have no idea how many weights you're lifting and it if it's not part of your already routine you could be completely depleted the next day and basically immobile
Yep. Absolutely.
because you have lifted way too much weight.
Yeah, and that's why, like, when we talk about what do I need to succeed in life, that's
Mm,
why I need flexibility.
yeah.
Not because I am trying to use or game the system. It's just that I just genuinely do not know what body I am going to wake up with. Because my brain has been taxed in ways that I don't fully understand. And I don't think any of us really do yet.
Mm-hmm.
I have more theories, but
Oh, okay. We'll get into those at some point for sure.
yeah, I do have more theories, but I think that like this theory first off is like that's why I need flexibility in the time that I clock in. For
Right.
any of our OG listeners, they will remember an episode where I got very spicy and
You did.
very annoyed
Upset.
by having to
Yeah.
clock in right on time because it didn't account for the fact that my brain could shift at any moment.
And I think this idea of radical acceptance, but also advocacy, advocating for yourself and feeling confident to say that this is what I need and this is why I need it, just like anybody who, would have a mobility device would say, I need
Yeah.
to have a ramp to get into the office, right? I'm going to need, or it's going to take me longer, right? And I'm going to need this or that. It's very interesting. It is ADHD Awareness Month.
Mm.
And so am curious from people in our community. I know we're really working on developing our Facebook page a bit more. We'll put a link to it. But I think one of the questions I have is around, this idea of how do we advocate for the things that we need for those that love people with ADHD and people who have ADHD, and really kind of diving into that a little bit more. So for you, one of the things you have to advocate for is time flexibility and
Mm-hmm.
having employers and people in your life know that that's something that you need. And especially like your sister, when you're starting a podcast, that's
That's true. I need a 4-hour time flexibility day or a nap.
And- Oh, well, I really appreciate you digging into this with me, and I'm curious what our community thinks about it as well. And I appreciate you, again, always being able to give me grace and space as well when I'm having a tough day. So I appreciate you.
Ditto. I appreciate you too.
Love you.
Love you too.
Bye.
Bye. That wraps up another episode of the Spicy Brain Podcast, brought to you by Spicy Brain Studios. This series has us focusing more specifically on ADHD and the symptoms list we got from the book Driven to Distraction. If you enjoyed the episode as much as I enjoyed me and my sister, please share it with someone you think would benefit from the conversation. Make sure to follow us on whatever platform you are currently listening to so that you can get notified each week. Now, next week, we'll be talking about restlessness. Feeling a little edgy while at rest. Basically, my entire existence and why I struggle to sleep. Yeah, that feeling. So come on back next week to hear our deep dive into that conversation. But until then, here's to a great end of the week, and remember, stay curious.